know you saying what they told you.
Okay. Let me say this.
Because you can't.
No.
Do it right.
Let me say this in my defense.
He
got it.
Let's see.
Let me say this in my defense, okay? I know it's not Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John because Jesus only got one book. He got one book. It was one book, and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is 4 books. So I know the Injil is one book, and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are 4 books. So
how do you know that the gospel only contains one book? Like, for example, the Jews and Christians, they're called people of the book, right?
Right.
So that's using book singular.
Sure.
But do Jews hold to the gospel? Do they hold to the gospel?
They don't believe in Jesus. No.
Right. They don't believe in Jesus. They reject the gospel. But the Quran still lumps them together as people of the book, even though it's talking about the Torah and the gospel. It's talking about 2 books. So even though Jesus has revealed a book, or the gospel, a book, still within that book can be a collection. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe.
Just like the Torah.
I kind of saying.
The Torah is multiple books, but it's
Yeah.
called one book.
So you're saying because the Jews and Christians are referred to as the people of the book, right? That implies that. I mean, that's kind of your interpretation of what people of the book means, right? Isn't it? Because you're saying that necessarily means that book contains other books.
It literally does, because they're Jews and Christians.
But you agreed with that earlier. You agreed that the Jews don't believe in Jesus.
Yeah, they don't.
Right, so that Jews don't believe in the Injil.
They don't.
Right. And the Christians, they don't necessarily have to follow the Torah as like how the Jews is, right?
Well, maybe. I
right.
don't know.
But your Quran put them together as one singular group of people, but with multiple books. The people of the book.
Yeah.
One book.
It's referring to multiple books as the book, the one book.
You see what I mean?
Okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe that's just your interpretation of it. Maybe that's
You
just
agree with us?
No. That's,
Can you hear me?
No, but see. I've heard Muslims say, okay, that the Injil revealed to Jesus is only one book. He received,
that's what they say.
Like the analogy would be like the Quran, like how this Quran is one book and it was revealed unto Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Yeah.
Jesus got the Injil, which was one book, analogous to this book.
But how do you know that it's analogous? How do you know it's the same way?
How do I know it's the same way?
Yeah. How do you know that the way that Jesus received the gospel is the same way that Muhammad received the Quran? Couldn't they be completely different ways that they've received their revelation?
I suppose you're right. It could be. It could be different ways.
So saying that, because what we have is a collection of writings like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you're calling it the gospel, that therefore disqualifies that from being the Injil. That's not a good critique, because the Injil could be a collection of writings.
Okay, so let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you think So you think the Injil is just the 4 Gospels or the entire New Testament?
Correct. Well, that's a good question, because if I'm being charitable with the Quran saying that the Injil is something that was revealed to Jesus or given to Jesus, then if I'm being charitable, I would limit it to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because they wrote the Gospel of Jesus. Literally, Mark's writing literally starts off by saying, this is the beginning of the Injil, or the Gospel of Jesus Christ. So he's claiming to write the Gospel of Jesus, So, yeah, I would limit it to those writings since they are writing the Gospel.
You got my phone?
Okay.
Make sense?
Okay, so it would just be Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah. That's the Gospel. Yeah, that's the Injil. Yeah.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
Sure. So going on with this point, why this is important, because he's making the point that the Quran is confirming what we have. It's not saying that what we have is a distortion or a corruption. This is a misconception that Muslims have, but it's something that is directly going against what the Quran says. And so if we're going to let the Quran speak, then you have to accept our book. You have to, or else you're going against Allah.
Okay, and so
You remember all those verses I showed you? What you say? Well, I think you just no. I'm showing you what the Quran says. I'm not. They're and if you look, they're telling you something different from what your Quran says. Your Quran doesn't say what they say. I showed you verses in the Quran that they gave me. I didn't bring that Quran with me.
What about where Allah says, "Woe unto those who
write the book with their own hands"? Yes. Claiming it's from God, seeking a small price, right? Chapter 2, verse 79.
Yes.
Yeah. So notice what it says. It says, "Woe to those who write the book with their own hands, claiming that what they wrote is from God, trying to sell it off for a small price," right? So that's like me. If I write a book with my own hands, I claim it's from God, and I try to sell it off. Would that mean that the Quran is corrupted? If I wrote a book today with my own hands, claiming it's from God, would that mean the actual Quran is corrupted?
No.
Right. So same way, you have some of these people who are writing books with their own hands, claiming that these books are from God, trying to sell it off. But that doesn't mean that the actual Torah or the gospel is corrupted. It just means that these people are writing fake books.
You don't think that's referring to the Bible?
No, not at all.
I mean, of course you don't think it's referring to the Bible, but
like, yeah, if I'm being consistent with the Quran, like, we're not putting our own Christian lens, like, just based off what the Quran is saying in that context. It's not referring to the scriptures of the Jews and Christians, but it is referring to some of the people of the Jews who are writing books with their own hands and claiming that what they're writing is from God, putting it above the Torah. So we have an example of that in actual history. It's called the Talmud.
Okay, so you don't think the Christians ever did that?
No.
It never says that about the Christians.
Yeah, but you do have in history, like, you have heretical Christians. We'll call them Gnostics, who throughout history they used to come out with oh, thanks, man.
No problem.
You too, bro.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Thanks, bro.
The Gnostics used to come out with writings that they wrote with their own hands and would forge them and even try to write like disciples' names on them and stuff. And they were called out, they were rejected. So yeah, we do have history of this, but somebody writing a fake gospel or a fake, writing doesn't mean the actual gospel's tampered with or corrupted. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so how do you know that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are not forgeries?
Yeah, that's a good question, because throughout our church history, we have, how you guys say that you guys have a chain of narration with hadith? Right. We have what is called a chain of authorship, or another word what they would say is apostolic succession, meaning people who succeed or come after the apostles, their students and then their students and then their students, continuing to pass down the tradition, right? So in our early church tradition, like the Sahaba or the Tabaeen, the companions, they're all in consensus and unanimous that Matthew wrote Matthew, Luke wrote Luke, John wrote John, and Mark wrote Mark at the dictation of Peter. So our church history is consistent on the gospel authors.
Nobody.
Small nugget. I come from a long lineage of Middle Eastern Christians. They always called it Injil. Growing up, my grandfather, his grandfather, going back all the way to Muhammad and past him, we always called the New Testament the Injil.
Yeah, that's nice.
Nobody even considered it to be forgeries until like Marcion, which is like the 7th century, like 700 years later. That's when this one guy who had a problem with Matthew theology about what it was in Matthew didn't write Matthew and Mark didn't write Mark. But the early church fathers, they totally put him straight and let him know, no, these are the ones that actually wrote these and scribed down these books. It's never been a point that where we didn't know who wrote this Injil, this gospel.
I think Marcion was 2nd century.
2nd century?
Yeah, I just looked it up.
Could have sworn he came a little later than that.
Yeah, but
you might be right. Right.
But yeah, the bottom line is.
Didn't nobody contest.
He was crazy.
Yeah, nobody contested.
So the issue is the Quran affirms the scriptures we have. It says it's a continuation of our scriptures. It says we can find Muhammad mentioned in our scriptures, and this is why we should recognize Muhammad as a prophet. We have no excuse. And so for us, what we're doing is doing exactly what the Quran is telling us to do. We're going to use the gospel, we're going to use the Torah, and we're going to judge by it and see if Muhammad really is a messenger? Does he actually line up with the prophets? Does he line up with Jesus? Does he line up with Moses? And when we look at it, he contradicts them at core doctrines, obviously, like core Jesus being the Son of God, the crucifixion, substitutionary atonement, right? So God putting on the sins of the world unto someone. Muhammad disagrees with all these things, but this is what the Torah and Gospel teach.
Well, I would say also Allah disagrees with
Yeah,
all that stuff.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
the point. Yeah,
Allah shouldn't be able to disagree because Allah is the one that said He revealed these books. That's even worse if Allah is the one that disagrees, because now Allah Himself
it's
is
contradicting himself.
Okay.
And you don't
Well,
think God can contradict Himself, right?
no.
Okay, so now something is off.
You see the logic,
Yeah.
right? You understand what we're saying.
Yes, you're saying that the Quran says that we have the Bible or the Torah and the Gospel.
Yeah.
And because they say that Jesus is the Son of God and that He died on the cross, that means that, they both can't be revealed from God, so the Quran must be false.
Exactly.
Something like that.
So now here's why. Because since the Quran is saying these scriptures are true, if it contradicts true scriptures, then that would mean the Quran is false. Now, if these scriptures are corrupted, even though we got rid of that, but let's even say that these scriptures are corrupted at that time, then this would mean that the Quran is confirming corrupted books, which would still make the Quran false.
Quran will still be false.
So really the crux of this argument seems to be that you believe what Allah is talking about when He says the Torah is what the Jews currently have, and you believe that what He's referring to as the gospel is like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So okay, I don't know.
There's no way to
Maybe-
disprove it that it wasn't. There's no way to disprove it. Nobody have ever read this Injil that you believe in. Nobody have read this Injil
This isn't.
that they believe in. Because everything, if I was to ask you, have you read this Injil? The one that's not Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John that was given to Jesus, have you ever read it?
Well, I mean, I guess I would believe that it was lost, or like
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John may contain parts of it, statements from it. Like here's the way I kind of think of it, right? Like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John would be kind of like what we would call the Sirah, right? That's kind of like what those books are. It's a biography of the messenger, Jesus at that time. In the case of the Sirah, it's Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, right? So I see the Gospels as like an analogous to the Sirah, right?
But how do you know the Injil wasn't that?
How do I know the Injil wasn't?
Wasn't like a sitter type book?
Well, because the only example that we have of a book from Allah that's completely unaltered is the Quran. So I guess my point would be that if Christians really had the Injil, I'd expect it to look similar to what the Quran is.
Yeah, so
That makes sense.
So we understand your point of view. The problem is that there's a lot of assumptions.
Sure.
You're assuming a lot to come to that conclusion, right? And so I would say to kind of just open yourself to the possibilities of the other things that we brought up, that would get rid of why you would disqualify Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John as being the Injil, because all the evidence points to that. That's all we have, And so, here's a good example. The Quran says that Jesus was given the gospel, right? Now the question would be, was Jesus given a physical book, or was it kind of like how the Quran was given to Muhammad, like orally? What would you say?
I would assume it was a recitation similar to what Muhammad.
Similar to Quran,
received.
yeah, absolutely. And so Jesus wasn't walking around with a physical book.
Yeah.
He's going around preaching the gospel orally, right? Which is exactly what our scriptures say too. It says Jesus was going around preaching the gospel,
Yeah.
and it had his teachings. So Then the Quran later on, as what he showed you in chapter 7, 157, it talks about how the Injil and the Torah are written books that have Muhammad's description in them, and that the Jews and Christians have these books with them in Muhammad's time. So at some point, the Injil got written down, right? So there's a distinction between the Injil, the oral Injil that Jesus is preaching, and then the physical Injil that got written down, right? Now, it's obviously the same thing because it's calling both the Injil, but they're just different modes. One is orally and one is written, right? So someone wrote down the message that Jesus was preaching, right? They wrote down his words, right? And who would you think would have been the ones who wrote down his words?
Who do I think would have written down Jesus' words?
Yeah, you had to give a guess. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe,
Would you guess his companions, like people that were close
his
to him?
disciples.
Yeah.
His disciples
Yeah,
did.
same belief as us. So maybe the disciples would have written down his words. Could have been during while he was preaching it, or maybe a few years after, and they're just recounting and just writing it down. Who knows? But let's say so his disciples are the ones writing it down, right? And then they get passed down to generation to generation to generation. So then, if the disciples are writing down what Jesus said and did, his message, we would expect this written document to include some biographical information, like Jesus went here and said this.
Not necessarily. I mean, yeah, not necessarily.
Why not?
What if they just wrote down important statements of Christ?
Sure, but they would all have to say Jesus said, for you to know, for them to depict that in context Christ is speaking.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe.
It's just like how if you was to write down this event right here, you would have to put in certain things like settings and places and stuff like that for people to get the general idea of what this conversation was.
Like you would say, word said,
Yeah.
And what's your name, brother?
Mark.
And then Mark replied, boom, 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 boom. And then Avery responded, my name's Avery. Avery responded, boom, 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 boom.
But that's kind of an assumption, I feel like, because you're assuming that it would necessarily be a biographical format like it is in the gospel.
Sure, maybe not necessarily. I'm saying that it could be that, though. Maybe it doesn't have to be, but it shouldn't surprise us if it is that, right? Like, that wouldn't disqualify from being the Injil.
Because you're making an assumption too.
What
You're
assumption am I making?
you're assuming that it must be in context and similar revelation as the Quran, when you have no evidence for that. You have no evidence that it have to look similar to the Quran. You know what I'm saying? So you're making an assumption as well.
Okay.
But our assumption is more logical. Our assumption actually fits into the narrative. Your assumption, it don't, because you don't have no other evidence to go off of to even give your assumption even credibility. Ours do. We have what they have. You know what I'm saying? We do have at least that, and that's the only thing that's been known through human history as the gospel is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So history is on our side. It's not on your side. You know what I'm saying? So your assumption is plausible, but it's not realistic. Because that's just an assumption that can fall at any minute.
Let me say this. Let me say this. Okay, as I told you before, I've been Muslim for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that process started with me actually reading the Quran. Okay. When I read the Quran, I realized that, a normal human being couldn't have written it. A normal human being couldn't have written the Quran. That's what I realized when I read it. Like the information about, people of the past and about the Bible and there were also certain doctrines that I really latched onto from it. I realized that this couldn't be written by someone like Prophet Muhammad.
How did you verify that? That, like, let's say, for example, when it talked about the stories of the prophets and stuff, how did you verify that the Quran was getting that stuff right?
How did I verify that it was getting it right?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Let me back up a little bit. So I guess where I'm coming from is that when I read it, I didn't necessarily know it was. I didn't assume it was the truth before I read it. But what I'm saying is like, you know, it's information that I don't think somebody like Prophet Muhammad, given his background, because I knew before I became Muslim that Prophet Muhammad was literate, and I don't think this is something an illiterate person could have come up with on his own. All right,
But he didn't. I agree with you that Muhammad didn't come up with stuff on his own. One of his nickname is the ear. The people that disbelieved in him used to call him the ear. You'll find it. You want to know why?
He repeated everything.
Because he would hear things and then repeat it. He would repeat traditions. He would repeat. For example, you know the story of Jesus where it talks about him creating a bird from clay.
Right.
That's in a Gnostic gospel that existed hundreds of years before Muhammad. I think it's called the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. Is it of Thomas?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas. That's and Jesus speaking in the cradle. That's also in another Gnostic gospel.
Okay, so but see, that's the problem. Like, how did he get that information?
It's tradition.
Did he read the gospel?
No,
he couldn't read it at all.
It's word of mouth. It's word of mouth. Muhammad he worked with caravans and stuff like that. He was a merchant.
So you're saying he got all of his information from hearsay?
Yes. He do you know who Warwica is?
No.
No? Okay, so Warwica was his first wife, Khadijah's I want to say cousin or uncle, one of those. It was a family member of his first wife. Muhammad was very close with Warwica. Warwica was a Gnostic Christian. So the hadith in Bukhari talks about how Warwica used to write down the gospel and translate it into Arabic.
So you're saying he heard it from him?
I heard a lot of stuff from Warwica. He had a Christian scribe that used to write down stuff for him. He used to communicate with the Jews a lot. There's a hadith that says that the Jews used to recite the Torah in Hebrew and then translate it and explain it in Arabic. There's a hadith that says that, authentic hadith. So you have where Muhammad is in communication with different groups, even pagan groups. He's in communication with them and hearing things, hearing traditions, hearing these stories and fables. There's even a verse in the Quran, bro, there's a couple of them, where the people accuse Muhammad. They say, these are fables that we heard before. Like, this isn't nothing new. You know, he's just copying what someone is telling him, because these are our fables.
And among them there are those who abuse the prophet and said, he is an ear. Said an ear of goodness. For you that believe in Allah, believe in the believers, right? Of mercy. Said he just repeats everything that he hears.
Yeah, but that's what the disbelievers said.
But
because they're telling stories. He's telling stories
that they already know. They already know this stuff. These are traditions that are within their own communities. So they're like, you're not a prophet, dude. You're just repeating stories that are of old that we already know. These are our traditions, you know. So
they already knew these.
This isn't miraculous revelation to Muhammad. He's repeating stuff. And a lot of stuff he repeats, it's wrong information because they're fables, you know? So that's why I asked the question, when you're looking at what Muhammad is saying about these people in the past, how are you verifying that the Quran is getting this stuff right? Because if you were to ask me, if I read the Quran, I'm like, oh, this is what he's saying about Moses, Joseph, Jesus, Abraham, Ishmael. He has these stories that he's saying. Let me go double check with the original information, which would be the Torah, to see if this lines up, which it doesn't.
Okay, what about like Surah Yusuf? I mean, that lines up pretty well, doesn't it?
Not really. So it's actually, Surah Yusuf is really good because, but Surah Yusuf is, I think, chapter 12.
That's chapter 12.
Yeah,
That's chapter 12.
Yeah. Eunice is chapter 10. Yeah, but. Your question about Joseph, right? Joseph's story.
Yeah.
So there's even details with Joseph's story that he gets wrong. For example, life, the Joseph story, right? The difference between the Quran and what he says about how Joseph got into slavery. What does the Quran say?
Yeah. So on the Joseph story in the Quran, it says that Joseph in the Bible it says Joseph went to go find his brothers. The Quran tells the story where the brothers are actually pre-telling, hey, Israel, Jacob, can you send him out with us tomorrow? And so he tells the story completely backwards, and he tries to foretell the story with the ending already in the presupposition of the beginning of the conversation, while the Bible tells the story completely different. The brothers pull Joseph out of the pit. In the Quran, the a water boy, pulls him out of the pit. And there's a bunch of other details too. I don't want to overwhelm you, but those are just two.
Yeah. So and
Tell the story backwards.
and it's
wrong.
and it's important because Joseph's how he got out of the pit is what propels the rest of his story. How he got to Egypt as a slave, and all of that. You know, so those are not just minute details we could just ignore. These are really important. So Muhammad's retelling these stories because he's hearing these traditions, but he's telling them wrong. And how do we know that he's wrong? Because we have the original source to look at. We have the Torah.
If I give him one easier one to understand, because that one's a little bit more complex. In Luke 1, do you remember the story of Zechariah? Yeah. Okay, so Zechariah couldn't speak for the entire term of the pregnancy. In your Quran, it says 3 nights. That's the clearest, retelling of a story that's wrong. That's like you saying you talked to GodLogic today, and he had a red shirt on and orange shorts. That's just completely wrong. It's easy to know. Okay, how do you mess up on that detail if you're hearing from God?
So you gotta investigate it, you know. Just gotta look into it.
I ain't trying to overwhelm.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I still believe in the Quran though.
So yes.
I still do because I'm not convinced that he could have just heard all this stuff and just put it all together. Like it seems like he.
80% of the Quran
I'm
has been
still not
retold.
convinced of that.
So what is it about the Quran? Like let's get to the meat of why you believe it. Then, what would you say is the crux of the matter of what convinces you that Islam is the truth, that the Quran is the truth? What is it?
Well, let me say this.
Okay.
What started me looking into the Quran was this experience I had. I was watching a pastor online, and he was talking about Islam,
Yeah.
and talking about everything why it's wrong, and he said, and he was using strong language to talk about Prophet Muhammad, and something in my mind, I don't know, I just felt this feeling of stress almost, like something in my mind was telling me this is not the truth. Like what he's saying is fundamentally wrong in some way. And I was a Christian at the time, and I thought, well, you know, I don't believe Muhammad is a prophet. So why am I getting this feeling like what this Christian is saying is so fundamentally wrong while I'm listening to him condemn Prophet Muhammad? Because I feel like, you know, with a person like Prophet Muhammad, he either is somebody everybody should follow or he's somebody nobody should follow.
Agreed.
Right? He either is a prophet, the greatest human being, or he is like
A false prophet and one of the worst.
Exactly. So why do I feel this reservation, hesitation? Why does it feel wrong what this pastor is saying about Prophet Muhammad? So it got me thinking. And then when I read the Quran, I began reading the Quran. It talks about those who deny the truth, right? How
Oh, I gotta sneeze, but it's not coming out. No, go ahead. I'm listening.
talks about those who deny the truth, right? And how
Okay, finally. Thank you.
It talks about those who deny the truth, right? And how Actually, let's look at it. You know, in Surah Al-Baqarah. You know.
So is this going to be up the line of what convinced you?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is. Actually, maybe I can't find the verse, but the point is, it talks about how, Allah has set a seal on their eyes and on their ears and on their hearing and on their hearts, and that's why they don't believe. That's why they feel compelled to deny the truth.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, maybe this is what I'm doing with with Prophet Muhammad. Maybe that's why I'm assuming that he's not a prophet, because I have this seal over my heart and over my eyes. And maybe this feeling that I'm having, I should trust it. Does that make sense? This feeling that I have that it's wrong what this man is saying about him. Maybe I should trust that feeling and investigate this further. Maybe there is some blindfold over my eyes. I don't know.
So
And that's what got me thinking about it.
That's so I understand that. So what was it that you investigated that convinced you that he was a true prophet? Because I understand the build-up. I understand, I have some reservation of what this guy is saying about him. You know, and currently you're not aware of Muhammad and his prophethood. You don't have a dog in the fight. So you're curious now. Like, wait, hold on a second. Like, who is this guy? Let me go check and see what's up. So you investigate him. So in investigating him, there's something there that convinced you, like, okay, yep, this is the truth. So what was that?
It was a lot of small things, but like, okay, so I don't know if I should say this or not.
Be as honest as you can. Because I want to understand you as best I can. So.
Really? Okay. Yeah, so, no, just,
Was it prophecies? Was it consistency? Was it, what was it? Did you have a dream?
no, it wasn't really any of that stuff. It was just a lot of little things. I think maybe what needs to happen is that we just need to just try and read the Quran with an unbiased lens.
So I've done that.
Oh, you have? You've
Yeah.
read the whole thing?
Whole thing, bro. I read the whole thing. That's why, I encourage people to read the Quran, to be educated on it.
What did you think about when Allah talks about his signs, right? Like, where it talks about, like, birds as a sign, or like
Bible says the
weather
same thing.
patterns as a sign.
Bible says the same thing.
The Bible says the same thing about birds?
It says all of creation speaks to the glory of God.
Okay, no, but I mean, like, specifically about birds, like, as a sign for those who believe. You know what I mean? I found that very interesting when I read the Quran. Like, why is that a sign for those who believe? And, it's just, I'm afraid of how much I should say, but, like, no, I mean, it's things like that, or like where, or like even the verse that I was talking about before, like,
Brother, the Bible says that when you look at creation, it all speaks to the glory and the existence of God, and that how we can see his nature and his character through creation by what he's created. So all of creation are signs that point to God. That's what Romans chapter 1 teaches. So I understand what you're saying. Like, I understand what the Quran is saying. Like, when you have it talks about, like, do they not see the heavens and the earth and the stars and the design of them, believing in Allah and stuff like that. So yeah, but how do you know, like, that's not what's going to convince you that, okay, yeah, but Muhammad is the true prophet, or that this Quran is the true word of God, because multiple religious books say the same thing.
Right. Well, maybe I'm not explaining myself as best as I could.
Okay.
But I mean, and again, I could be totally honest, but, like, okay, here's another experience that I had that got me started to think about Islam, right? So maybe I shouldn't share that. But
I just want you to be honest with what convinced you. If it's just reading the Quran and how the Quran talks about God, is that what convinced you?
yeah, it's like I was convinced by like things about, well, the signs of Allah, like it's talking about like people of different races as signs, the alternation of day and night as a sign,
Okay.
the alternation of clouds, of winds, talking about birds as a sign,
Yeah.
things of this nature. Like,
So would you agree that, because I can agree with you that all of those things are signs, because both our scriptures say that. Would you agree that that alone doesn't demonstrate that the Quran is from God? But like, because there's multiple books that are saying this.
well, because I didn't necessarily want to say this at the beginning, but I've actually read the entire Bible.
Okay.
I've read the entire thing, the King James version, and I don't see anywhere where it's talking about where it goes specifically into the signs of God in the same way that the Quran does.
What? Oh, bro. Hold on a second. Let me show you, bro. Have you read the book of Job?
Yeah, I've read the book of Job.
You read the book of Job, and you're telling me you haven't seen God go into details on the signs that point to him? Hold on, man.
Right, you're
God.
talking about like.
What's on your mind? Go ahead, share it. God begins speaking with Job. Let me pull this up. All right. So Job chapter 38. After Job has been complaining and stuff like that, God then finally answers Job and begins to speak to him.
Oh no! Oh, there's a phone because it was flopping everywhere, dog. I wouldn't even mean.
All right.
I'm cool, man. Man, we ate so much chicken. You like 'em?
So this is what Yahweh says. This is God speaking. It says, Then Yahweh answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, Who is that? Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now gird up your loins like a man, and I will ask you, and you make me know. So because he was questioning him, God is now challenging him. You're going to sit in this hot seat. You're not, I'm going to question you, and you're going to explain these things to me. He says, Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you know understanding. Who sets its measurements, since you know? Or who stretched the line on it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, all the sons of God shouted for joy. Or who enclosed the sea with doors, when bursting forth went out from the womb? When I made a cloud its garment, and dense gloom its swaddling band, and I placed boundaries on it, and set a bolt indoors. And I said, Thus far you shall come, but no farther. And here shall your proud waves stop. So he's explaining how he set boundaries on the ocean floor and the waters, and how they don't surpass what he set for them, and how these are signs to him.
No, but he's not talking about signs there. He's just
Yes,
saying what
he
he
is.
did. He's not talking about signs though. Like the Quran specifically mentions signs for people to look at this sign, right? A sign is supposed to indicate something, right? So the Quran lists birds and the alternation of day and night and the patterns of how, you know, even clouds move, things like this. And he says that they're signs for people who believe and for people of understanding.
Watch this.
But this is just saying what God.
No, it's saying what God did as a sign that he is God to Job. So Job, in questioning God and wondering about him and doubting and putting God in a judgment seat, God responds by pointing to things that he's done in creation, demonstrating signs of his sovereignty and his existence.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. I get that.
So it's consistent. Here's another one in general, the one I was talking about earlier. It says, let's see. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, both his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. So He says that everything that has been made are signs and evidences to God and who he is, his power and his nature.
Yeah.
So the Bible says the same thing that the Quran is saying in pointing to creation as signs that God is real and only God could have done this.
I agree with you. You know, yeah. What you showed me is interesting. However, I still hold fast to my prophet.
I want to know why. If he contradicts the prophets from before, if he's not saying anything special, what is it about him that holds you to still believe in him as a prophet? You don't know?
I know, but I mean, you ask a very good question. I know you're putting me on the spot, and you're asking me why I believe, but I just have to be honest with you. Like, I think the alternative to Islam being true, to some extent, is ridiculous. Like, I don't think it's possible that he. I think like the experience I had when I heard that preacher, I just felt like in my mind when I'm hearing him say all these bad things about Prophet Muhammad, like this feeling inside me was telling me he's not being honest, he's not being genuine, he's not telling the full truth about something.
And you wanted to investigate.
Yeah, I wanted to investigate.
So when did you investigate what Muhammad's behaviors, his character, his do you know about his marriage with Aisha?
Yeah, I know about his marriage with Aisha.
And you're okay with that?
Okay, where does the Bible condemn what he did? Okay, you're a Christian, your final authority is the Bible. Where does the Bible condemn what Prophet Muhammad did by marrying Aisha and consummating and marrying Aisha when he did at that age?
I got you. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And so if the Bible condemns it, then you'll condemn it?
Let's just see what the Bible has to say.
Okay, look. So this is 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 36. It says, "But if any man thinks that he is acting unbecomingly toward his virgin daughter," meaning he's received a virgin to be married, "if she is past her youth, and if it must be so," right? So she has to be past her youth. "Let him do what he wishes. He does not sin. Let her marry." She has to be past her youth. She can't be a child. Okay. She has to be past her youth, a young woman, in order to be married.
Okay, interesting. Because what version of the Bible was that?
This is LSB, a Legacy Standard Bible.
Yeah, because I was thinking more along the lines, along the lines of the King James. Because when I read in the King James, what it says is the flower of her age.
Yeah, same thing. She has to be past her youth or the flower of her youth.
In other words, she had to have reached puberty, right?
Oh, it's not just puberty.
The flower of her age. That's what it's referring to. Like flowers, isn't that?
She's grown.
Isn't that what the flower of your age is referring to? Puberty. Like,
it's not just puberty, but growth, like maturity. So she has to be past the flower of her youth or her age, meaning she's not a child anymore. She's a young woman. Once and that's a case by case basis, obviously, but once she is a young woman, then she is able to be married off. You'll see this throughout the scriptures. Like, for example, Jesus calls a 12-year-old a little girl. Her name was Tabitha that he healed. She was 12 years old. He said she's a little girl. So obviously, no, So she has to be a young woman.
Yeah, the way that I was taught it in church, he said, like, the flower of her age.
Yeah, that doesn't just mean you're getting your period. Because you get your period, you're still a kid. There's 8-year-olds that have gotten their periods before.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my point, right? He waited until she had reached puberty before he consummated the marriage. So she had reached the flower of her age when he was with her.
No, brother. So two things. Number one, flower of your age doesn't mean, oh, you started to bleed, so therefore you can breed now. Because like we said, an 8-year-old can get her period, that doesn't mean she's past the flower of her age. Would you agree? She's still a child, right?
Well, I mean, by the way, you're using the term flower of rage to mean, okay, so.
You would agree that a girl who gets a period at 8 is still a child, right?
I would agree she's still a child, but she is past the flower of her age.
Okay. So you don't have a problem with a man having relations with, let's say, an 8-year-old who has had her period?
Look, here's the thing about that, right? I believe God is the one who told Prophet Muhammad to marry Aisha at that age. Okay, I believe God is the one who did that,
Yeah.
who orchestrated that. And, you know, I think it is strange to us, but I believe that's what God said. So that's what goes.
I got you. I think that you're gonna. I just want to let you think about this, brother.
Sure.
If there is something that claims to be God and commands something and permits something that is as evil and disgusting as child abuse, it is upon us to be able to use our discernment to say that's not of God. And that's what Jesus warns us about, bro. Jesus warns us about many false prophets that will come after him, who claim to come from God and claim to be in line with him, but they'll be false prophets and they'll deceive many people. And they'll deceive many people into making excuses for child abuse like this. And so we're at a day and age where, we got good brothers like yourself. You're a genuine person from what I've judged in our conversation. And I genuinely believe that you believe what you believe. And so you're following a religion and a man who is telling you that God permits child abuse. But you're saying that, well, God said it's okay, so
Wait
it's
a
good.
minute, didn't people get married at younger ages in the past? Like,
Well,
isn't that a thing? Like,
That doesn't make it right. If people got raped in the past, that doesn't mean that it was ever okay.
okay, yeah, I agree.
So-
The Bible, the Quran, they both explicitly condemn rape. Okay,
The Quran doesn't.
it doesn't condemn rape.
It does. There's not a verse in the Quran that condemns rape, brother. There's not one verse. I know that's a crazy claim, but there's not one verse in the Quran that condemns rape. But think about this a little bit. Think about it. Consider. You said you investigated Muhammad, right? And so, what I want you to do going forward from here, I would encourage you to investigate what we brought today.
Okay.
And if you're genuine about truth, and you're genuine about being in right standing with God, that even if you'll follow, that means you'll follow the evidence where it leads, even if it goes against what you currently believe, like you did before, right? So do the same thing now. I would say revisit this case on Muhammad being a prophet based on the claims he made, being in line with the previous scriptures, being mentioned in the previous scriptures, being a good example of moral excellence. Investigate these things, and I'm curious to see what you'll find out. Okay.
Okay, maybe. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you.
It was an awesome conversation, man.
Yes.
It was very nice talking to you, Mark.
Yeah.
You live close to here?
No.
No?
I live further up north.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, yeah, it was good talking to you, man. Again, my name's Avery, bro. And this was we tried to come here to get people to think a little differently and consider some different things, you know. So, yeah. Some people take these conversations a little to heart.
Yeah,
you
people
know.
shouldn't be offended by people of other religions.
Yeah,
that's
man.
my feeling. That's my feeling.
I agree. Yeah, we're probably gonna get some foods and stuff like that, but you take care of yourself, okay?
Yeah.
It was so nice meeting you, Mark.
I see you.
It's God.